about that noise out there. Hello everyone, and thanks for joining. Before we begin, there are a few housekeeping items we need to go through. The audio for this webinar is available through your computer speakers or by telephone. If you choose to listen by telephone, you can get the dial-in information in the webinar panel you can see on your screen. Click on the buttons to expand the panel, and you should see a box open that allows you to type in a question or message and send it to us. You can send these questions through the question and answer function. You're all automatically muted, so if you would like to raise a question orally rather than type it in, you will be able to click the raise hand button. We'll see that, and at the appropriate time, we'll open up sound so that you can be heard. We will be tracking the questions during the session, and to the extent possible, we'll try to answer orally so that everyone participating can hear both the question and the answer. Anything that we can't answer during the session, we'll get back to you on. Depending on the time and the nature of the question, we may have to get back to you with an answer after the session is over. Please note that you can download the draft shared vision as well as a copy of this presentation through the handouts panel on your screen. The webinar will end at approximately 2 p.m. and the webinar phone line will close at that time. And just as a reminder, we will be recording this, and recordings will be available upon request in case you'd like to hear this again or share it with someone in your organization. Okay, let's begin. I'd like to introduce Jeff van Duynhoven, Executive Director, Modernization, who will be leading you through the webinar today. Jeff?
Great, thanks Brenda, and good afternoon everyone. We sent out the shared vision last week to all CPA member financial institutions and to everyone who participated previously in our workshops. I just wanted to pass on my thanks again to everyone who has contributed thus far throughout the process. Today, we wanted to take the opportunity to speak with you directly, take you through the highlights of the shared vision, and as Brenda suggested, give you a chance to ask questions and tell us what you think. Your feedback and input is really important to us, so please feel free to ask questions today. And we also encourage you to share your feedback and comments on the shared vision document following the presentation by emailing consultation@cdnpay.ca. There we go. Okay, let's start by talking about how we got here. It's no secret that the payments landscape is changing. What we are experiencing today, many of us could not have imagined just a few short years ago. Evolving technologies are offering Canadians new ways to communicate, connect, and conduct business, not to mention managing many aspects of their lives. Consumers and business needs and expectations for payments are evolving as well. And regulators have enhanced safety and security requirements for critical infrastructure. Payment service providers need to support convenient, flexible, simple payment experiences while maintaining security and protecting user information to stay competitive. At the same time, new players and technologies are entering the payments arena, both in Canada and abroad. Besides financial institutions who continue to innovate, for example in the mobile space and check imaging, some of the world's largest and most innovative companies, like Apple, Google, Samsung, as a few examples, are introducing payment products and services. And disruptive technologies are also showing potential to dramatically impact payments as well. I'm sure everyone on the line has heard about the blockchain. Payments are being assimilated into the commerce experience. They're no longer a standalone commodity. And Uber is a great example of this. For anyone who's used the service, you'll know that it's all about making things easier and more convenient for the consumer. It's key for the business that the focus is on the service they're providing and that the payment is essentially in the background. For Canada, these are important considerations. Our systems were designed and implemented many years ago and are not easily adaptable to new features. In order for us to make the appropriate changes to our core infrastructure, we knew we needed to get a better understanding of user needs, new technologies, players, and global trends. Around the world, investments are also being made in payments infrastructure to support these changes. There's been a particular focus on data-rich payments that make funds available in less than a minute. While Canada is known internationally as a payments leader, both in payment functionality and security, Canada's payment system must keep pace to ensure Canadian businesses remain competitive on the global stage. Of particular interest to us, of course, is the United States, which represents about 3/4 of Canada's exports and 2/3 of Canada's imports. The U.S. has been moving forward aggressively with payment modernization. As you see on the slide, the Clearinghouse has been working on a new real-time ISO 20022 compliant payment system that is expected to be operational in early 2017, as well as the U.S. Federal Reserve is working on same-day automated clearinghouse payments for the fall of 2016. Additionally, a number of countries around the world, such as Sweden, Singapore, and the United Kingdom, have already implemented new systems. So while Canada is not on the leading edge, we are in the second wave of countries moving toward modernization. There are some definite pros to that. We're well positioned to benefit from lessons learned in earlier implementations, which could reduce our implementation cost and accelerate our timelines. A great example of this is ISO 20022. Much of the value of modernization is delivered by creating the capability for payment-related information to travel with a payment, reducing the need for labor-intensive processes such as reconciliation. ISO 20022 has emerged as the global payments messaging standard and is considered an essential component of any payments modernization plan. To date, 30 countries, including the US, the Eurozone, Japan, are adopting ISO 20022. Canada is on track to do so as well, and that we will be launching our messages for automated funds transfers, which includes payments like direct deposits and pre-authorized debits, in April of this year. So at the same time, Canadian regulators are also carefully monitoring global developments to ensure that Canada's payment system attributes continue to keep pace. The Department of Finance has established 3 key objectives for the payment ecosystem that the CPA must consider in fulfilling its legislative mandate. You'll see here on the screen that the desired outcomes for the core payments infrastructure are listed on the right, and they are the guidance that finance has provided to the CPA. Clearly, safety and soundness are obviously paramount importance, particularly for the high-value payment system, which underpins the entire financial system and Canada's economy. The focus on efficiency and effectiveness is really about 2 key areas. One is access, that is fair to participants, fosters competition, and prevents placing a network or participant in a position to abuse market power. And the second is technological innovation, to make enhanced products and services available and economic efficiencies to enhance processes, reduce costs, and increase user welfare. And finally, meeting the needs of Canadians and protecting their interests by supporting the standards of operating principles and the safety and security of payments. So I thought maybe we'd pause there. So Brenda, if you can open up the lines, perhaps we'll see if there's any questions to date. And if not, we'll be happy to jump back into the rest of the presentation.
Okay, Jeff, the lines are open. For any participants who have not yet sent in their audio pin, I will be sending you your pin. Just click on that and to submit it, and then you will be able to speak freely.
If there's any questions thus far, either the Department of Finance objectives or any of the previous few slides?
You made note of a date, April of this year.
Yes.
What exactly will be happening in April of this year?
So in April of this year, the CPA will release new rules for AFT that relate to ISO 20022.
Great, thank you.
So it's a new, in addition to Standard 5, which is the current message protocol, it'll be a new message protocol that will start and be available for financial institutions to begin adopting at that time.
Sorry, when you say begin adopting at that time, so exchanges can begin to take place at that time?
In theory, FI would have to first, state its readiness and everything else. But yeah, so it's open for financial institutions to determine if they want to support it at that point in time. It's a voluntary adoption initially, and once we know more about modernization, we can determine, what is the longer-term path for ISO 20022 with respect to AFT and other schemes.
Thank you.
Just to confirm, was that Nancy asking the question?
Sorry, yes, that was.
Thank you, Nancy. We have no further questions written at this time, Jeff.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll move on. Of our global counterparts. Are you okay, Brenda, with this?
Yeah, 1 second, Jeff.
Okay. Okay. So on this slide, we want to cover off what does modernization look like for Canada. And while we intend to learn from the experiences of our global counterparts from the first wave, those who are already live, such as the UK and the Scandinavian countries, the CPA is committed to taking an approach that is right for Canada and right for Canadians. Our modernization plans will be based on significant user and industry consultation and sound research. This will ensure that the future payment system is the right one for Canada. And that begins by defining a shared vision for the Canadian payments ecosystem. What does a modern ecosystem require? What needs exist in the marketplace? What needs exist from a regulatory perspective, as we just covered off? And what is required to meet those needs? From there, we'll examine the role of the CPA and how we can support the shared vision and progress in payments. What enhancements should the CPA make to our core infrastructure? So that is our systems, our rules, and our standards. And what enhancements or changes does the market or the financial services industry make to enable downstream competition and innovation? And then finally, we'll set a roadmap for positive change in the ecosystem and begin the actual execution of that plan with the conceptual design. So first, I think it's important to level set. We are here today, obviously, to talk about the shared vision, but before we dive into the findings from our research, I wanted to make sure everyone is on the same page in terms of what to expect from the shared vision and what not to accept in the shared vision. So the shared vision is intended to articulate the aspirations, characteristics, and attributes that are required for a future Canadian payments ecosystem. But most importantly, what it's not to do is to tell us who should deliver those desired attributes, whether that's the CPA or somebody else, when those attributes should be delivered, so there's no timeline associated with this, and how the characteristics or features should be delivered. So what are the solutions for meeting any of those detailed requirements? We can look forward to learning more about all of these when we move into the conceptual design phase later this year. So before we dive into the findings, I wanted to pause a moment and just see if there's any questions on the understanding of what is or is not the shared vision, or against anything else thus far. And if not, I'll ask Brenda again to open the lines. So please don't be shy. There's lots of lines to open.
There are indeed, Jeff. Okay, anyone can go ahead with a question if they like. Jeff, we have no written questions.
Okay. Okay. All right. We'll. Okay. So let's move forward then and talk about the findings. The CPA retained global consulting firm McKinsey & Company to support the shared vision work, and our two organizations work closely together over the last 7 months or so. Stakeholder interviews began in 2015 and fed into a fact-based analysis to support this visioning exercise. So the shared vision was developed using input from ecosystem participants captured in workshops and interviews, as well as from a global scan of modernization initiatives in other countries. We built upon CPA stakeholder outreach efforts earlier in 2015, focused on the design and implementation of ISO 20022 messaging, the messaging standard, and we consulted with key payment stakeholders. So those stakeholders included consumers, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, large corporates, governments, financial institutions, suppliers, network and payment service providers, and fintech companies. So we had quite the breadth of focus of our consultation efforts. We also had conversations with the Department of Finance and the Bank of Canada, who both provided important input on their public policy and regulatory objectives. Overall, the findings in the shared vision reflect the perspectives of more than 100 organizations. And by now, with this broader outreach, by sharing with the member financial institutions of the CPA, we've reached out to almost 200 organizations as part of the socialization of the shared vision. As you look at the slide, you see we compare favorably to other countries in terms of the breadth of the socialization, with the exception of Australia, but admittedly, they've been at this for 2 years longer than we have. So we're comfortable with the breadth of the socialization that we've done. Now, in terms of our methodology, the vision was created with an end-user approach, understanding where end users and industry participants felt the existing ecosystem meets or does not meet their current and future needs in specific use cases. On the screen, you'll see it illustrates the template for our workshops and the use cases that were discussed. Each segment or group that you see here on the screen had its own set of findings, but we've summarized the aggregate findings in both the vision document and on subsequent slides in this presentation. So here's a summary of the 8 stakeholder needs that arose from our consultation efforts. There are a few findings I'd like to highlight. First, so if we start at the top left, the most common request across end users was for near real-time availability of funds. So that's seconds or minutes to support time-sensitive transactions. However, in other cases, users told us that hours were sufficient, for example, for payroll or some invoices where the information is sent in advance. But again, in those cases, same day was desired. But generally, every group wanted money to be available faster. The second item is that all users are looking for more data with the payment. Businesses and governments especially are still relying on checks and spend too much time reconciling electronic payments to their associated invoices, an issue that could be addressed with ISO 20022. The third is stakeholders also want to be able to send payments using known information about the recipient. Great examples of that are a mobile phone number or an email address, for example, rather than having to have specific account information. Recipients also saw this as an added benefit for privacy reasons. And stakeholders want more visibility into the status of a payment from initiation through to completion. And if we move to the top of the right column, last but not least, consumers and businesses both expressed frustration with the speed, efficiency, cost, and lack of transparency provided with cross-border payments. And then the second one in that column, outside of infrastructure features and functionalities that I've covered thus far, we've also heard loud and clear the need for organization-agnostic oversight rules applied consistently across activity. The pace at which innovative products and services are introduced is expected to continue to increase. Ecosystem participants seek a regulatory environment where new entrants and incumbents are subject to regulation based on the services they provide rather than the type of institution they are. Fintech players and non-bank payment providers envision a future with open and risk-based access. Most of these entities want improved access through existing participants, using more technologically advanced options and interfaces. And finally, financial institutions and service providers want the flexibility to introduce new products and services to meet customer needs. That is, they need a platform for innovation. If we put all these together, we have the 8 stakeholder needs and expectations for Canada's future payment ecosystem, and these begin to emerge. Adding to that, obviously, are the needs for the Bank of Canada and the Department of Finance. Bank of Canada, they obviously are looking for, as you see on the screen, the modernization of both retail and wholesale systems, the adherence to applicable regulatory oversight, including the prominent system standards to be introduced for the automated clearing and settlement system, and then the flexibility to accommodate future innovation and interoperability. The Department of Finance needs are on the screen here. Again, obviously I covered those off in an earlier slide, but we thought it repeated here because they do influence the overall outcomes of, what are those needs and the features required to meet those needs. So if we look at our Canadian findings to what we've learned about the global landscape, as I mentioned earlier, the CPA conducted research, and we did an extensive scan of the modernization efforts of international payments infrastructures. We've also interviewed representatives from payments associations, central banks, suppliers, and participating FIs from around the world. Based on this research, we identified 5 attributes that any payment system has. So those you see are on the left: timeliness of payment, functionality, credit risk management, interoperability, and access. Now, global modernization efforts implemented recently at least partially address all of these attributes, as you see with the Harvey balls on the right. Almost all of the countries who have moved to modernize their payment systems have focused on faster payments. Faster is becoming synonymous with near real-time, and recent implementations support the provision of good funds in less than 60 seconds by using credit push payments originated by the payor. Faster also means always available, with most countries supporting end-user funds availability 24/7, 365. It's important to note, however, that near real-time payment clearing does not require near real-time settlement. most jurisdictions have continued to use deferred net settlement. And of course, ISO 20022 has become the global messaging standard for the financial services industry, providing a common payment language across borders. Last, but certainly not least, bilateral clearing arrangements can work very effectively in situations where there is a limited number of direct participants, and one-to-one relationships can easily be maintained. As the number of participants increases, hub and spoke architecture becomes more efficient. So if we now know the needs of the Canadian marketplace, and we know what our global counterparts have done to meet similar needs, we must consider the features that could have a benefit for the Canadian landscape. The 5 features here you see on the right are the key requirements for payments arising from the shared vision. I won't go into all detail on them, but you see the 5 of them there: near real-time good funds, improved clearing and posting times, proxy or alias directory services, additional transaction information, it's more data with the transaction, so ISO 20022, and interoperability both domestically and internationally. A question we often get is the question of value and impact here. So what we've tried to articulate here is the value of modernization. And you'll see that the potential impacts for modernization are significant, as you see from the lengthy list on the screen. Preliminary estimates indicate that enhancing Canada's core payment infrastructure could see the potential migration of up to 1 billion automated funds transfer, check, cash, and wire transactions each year to a faster, data-rich payments platform. So while we haven't quantified all of these benefits, the number of transactions is certainly significant. And the migration of these transactions should create those significant operational savings for businesses, governments, consumers, and financial institutions. So what now? Well, if we go back to a slide that I showed you earlier, now that we know the needs of Canada's future payment ecosystem and what is required to meet those needs, we begin our planning phase. The current consultation phase we are in ends in early April, where we expect to receive board approval to move forward into the public consultation phase of our project. That's when you'll see the shared vision being shared more broadly outside of our member financial institutions and key stakeholders. Concurrently, we will be working with member financial institutions and stakeholders to plan and analyze options to address the market requirements. As I mentioned earlier, we will examine the role of the CPA and how we can support the shared vision, what enhancements we should make to our core infrastructure, again, systems, rules, and standards, and what enhancements and changes does the market and industry make to deliver this functionality. And then finally, we'll set a roadmap for the positive change in the ecosystem with the conceptual design. So as we move forward into the next phases, our focus will remain on achieving the shared vision for the industry. And that is creating a modern payment system that is fast, flexible, and secure, promotes innovation, and strengthens Canada's competitive position. So with that, we'll again open the lines and happy to take questions. You'll see here we added the email address as just a short reminder for you to provide your input to the CPA following this on the shared vision. And as well, following the webinar, you will, when you exit, you will also get a short survey, and we'd ask you if you've got time to complete that, as that'll help us in delivering, sharing future information as we go forward. So with that, I think the lines are open for questions.
We have
Nope.
no raised hands.
No raised hands, no questions? All right, well, I'll give people a moment to think about their questions if they have any. I'll take a chance to plug our conference that is coming up in June of this year. You know, clearly you'll be able to find out more about modernization. We'll have more information to share at that point in time. And there's also a lot of other interesting information at this conference. If you are interested and haven't registered, I'd encourage you to do that quickly because it is starting to fill up. We look forward to hosting a great event in Calgary in early June, or mid-June, I guess it is. All right, so if there's no questions, either raise your hand or just speak because all the lines are unmuted. Otherwise, we'll wrap up and thank everyone for their time. All right, seeing no questions, that's it then. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time. And again, please do complete the survey and please do provide us with the email feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.